Pharaoh is the ruler in the land. He is the one with all the wealth, with all the prestige, and thereby the one with all the power. But that is not quite how the story goes down. Instead, we have a story that is focused on a series of women who subvert the most powerful man in the land and use their compassion and courage to chart a totally different course. First, we meet Shiphrah and Puah, the midwives. They refuse to do what they are told to do. They claim that all the Hebrew women give birth before they show up. How funny that is. And then we meet Moses' mother and his sister, who in later Bible stories we learn are named Jochebed and Miriam. So she gives birth and hides her baby boy for 3 months. She does not allow anyone to throw her baby boy into the river as ordered by Pharaoh. And finally, when she realizes she can hide this baby no more, she places him in the river, kind of as she's ordered to do, but in a basket. So technically speaking, she does exactly what she's supposed to do. She just didn't do it quite at the time or in the way she is supposed to have done it. And then there's Miriam. Good big sister Miriam. So you imagine this young girl, maybe 5, 6 years old maybe, and she's following this basket down the river with her baby brother in it. She is doing just like you would see a child do who has thrown a stick into a stream, following to see where that basket or stick would go. And she follows only to stumble upon Pharaoh's daughter finding this basket with her baby brother in it. Now, Pharaoh's daughter, who doesn't have a name that we can figure out, notices that there's a Hebrew boy child in this basket. She doesn't order that this baby get put in the river and killed. Instead, she decides to keep him as her own, because that would save this baby. And Miriam, remember the small child, the big sister, speaks up, offering to find someone to nurse this baby. Because remember, there's no formula, there's no bottles, and so there has to be someone to feed this baby. So the baby's own mother is paid to nurse him as he grows up. There's this long string of women in a day and time where women are rarely named in history, and even rarer to have their stories told. And they're certainly a central part of this story. Now, they are clearly not the ones with power. Pharaoh is the one with the power in the story. He's the one who orders others to act on his behalf. He's the one who decides how things are going to go down in his area of the world. But the women, from the midwives to the mother, to the sister, to Pharaoh's daughter, they all manage to use courage and compassion to change the arc of this story. This isn't the story of yet another unnamed baby boy thrown into the river to die. Nope. This is the story of Moses, whose very name means to draw out. The story of Moses, who later leads the people out of Egypt and slavery onto the promised land. Now, this is a story that is made possible only because of this very strong, independently minded string of women. Now, this week, as we shared with the children, marks the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote in the United States of America. Well, white women, let's just be clear, because it took a lot longer for women of color to be able to vote. But it took 72 years for this to be accomplished. 72 years of strong, independent, courageous, compassionate women lobbying, marching, protesting for the right to vote. It took 72 years of women not giving up. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, many other women working tirelessly and courageously so that people like me could vote. Women like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Beecher Stowe were working to break down stereotypes of what women could do in similar times. Strong, courageous women have been working both behind the scenes, as is the case with the story of Pharaoh and Moses, and in the forefront for thousands of years. Now, it doesn't always get attention. They often go unnamed, which actually makes our Bible story today that much more remarkable, that these women had names. But regardless, women are working. And all people, regardless of gender identity, are capable of fighting off the feelings of powerlessness when facing powerful leaders who are making bad calls like Pharaoh did so long ago. Now, this story reminds us that justice can be had with a little bit of courage and a whole bunch of compassion and God nudging us along. God calls us, all of us, to yearn for justice. Our hearts are meant to hurt when we encounter somebody else who is hurting, like a baby floating down a river innocently. Our hearts are meant to hurt when we encounter unjust policies, like the demand to kill all boys born of a certain ethnicity of people. Our story today does not contain these exact elements, but the injustice and the hurt we feel remains. Our hearts hurt when we hear of families being separated at the border. Our hearts hurt when we hear of drilling being allowed in previously protected land in Alaska. Our hearts hurt when we hear of Black lives being threatened. Our hearts hurt when we see essential workers struggling to figure out what to do with their children when they have to go to work. Our hearts hurt. And that hurt nudges us toward action. God calls us to gather up our courage, our compassion, and to get to work when we notice that hurt. To call our representatives when there's a system that we see broken. To reach out to an individual and offer support. To donate money to an organization that is doing important justice work. To speak up when we hear others saying untrue or unjust things. To vote for issues and people we believe to be on the side of justice. God calls us. God nudges us, just as God did with the midwives, with Moses' mother and sister and Pharaoh's daughter. God calls us, not just women, not just the ones with spare time, all of us, to work for justice. We've got some work to do, so let's get to it. Amen.